The china was already on the table when we walked in. My mother's good set. The one with the blue flowers that chipped if you looked at it wrong. She only used it for Easter and funerals. So I knew something was off before I even took off my coat. Mark and Elena were already seated. Mark had his sleeves rolled up, which he only did when he was ready to argue. Elena was texting under the table, her thumb moving fast and her face perfectly still. My father sat at the head, reading the sports section, which he never did at dinner. My mother came out of the kitchen wiping her hands on her apron, and she kissed my cheek like she was trying to make up for something that hadn't happened yet. "You look tired," she said to me. "I am tired," I said. Paul parked himself in the chair next to Mark, which left me across from Elena. That was fine. I didn't want to sit next to anyone anyway. I'd spent the whole drive over rehearsing how I would tell them about the promotion. About how I'd been passed over. About how Diane had called me into her office at 4:50 on a Friday and said, "We're going in a different direction," as if I'd asked for directions. But before I could open my mouth, Mark set down his glass and said, "So I talked to Dad last week." My father didn't look up from the paper. "About what?" my mother asked, setting down the mashed potatoes. "About the house," Mark said. "About what happens when the time comes." The room went still. Even Elena stopped texting. I watched my mother's hands hover over the serving spoon. She was holding it like a weapon. "Mark," she said, "not at dinner." "Why not?" He leaned back in his chair. "We're all here. This is the only time we're all in the same room. I'm not saying I want the house tomorrow. I'm saying I want to know what the plan is. Because Dad told me 6 years ago, when I helped him redo the basement, that he'd put something aside for me." I looked at my father. He turned a page of the newspaper. Slow and deliberate, like he was reading about crop prices. "What did he put aside?" I asked. Mark shrugged. "He didn't specify. But he said I'd be taken care of. And I'd like to know what that means, considering Elena and I are looking at schools for next fall, and we need to know what we're working with." Paul reached under the table and patted my knee. I didn't want his hand there. I moved my leg. "Mark," I said, "why are you bringing this up now? Dad is right there. He can hear you." "I know he can hear me," Mark said. "That's the point." My mother sat down hard. The chair scraped the floor. "Your father is not dying. He had a checkup last month. The doctor said his heart is fine." "That's not what I'm saying," Mark said. "I'm saying we should be transparent. We're a family. We don't keep secrets." I almost laughed. We kept secrets like other people kept spare keys. Under the mat, behind the flower pot, taped to the underside of the drawer. The whole family history was a locked closet that no one opened. Elena finally looked up. She was good at that, the slow, deliberate look that said she was above the argument, but still willing to take notes. "Mark just wants to make sure nothing gets overlooked," she said. "You know how these things can go. One sibling gets the house, the other gets the car, and nobody talks about the bank accounts." "Who's talking about bank accounts?" I asked. "Nobody," Mark said quickly. "Then, but if there are bank accounts, I think we should know." My father folded the newspaper. He set it on the empty chair next to him, the one that was supposed to be for my grandmother, the one we never sat in. He looked at Mark, then at me, and then at my mother. "There's a will," he said. "It's been there for 10 years. Nothing has changed." "Nothing." Mark's voice went up a notch. "So the basement work meant nothing? The weekends I spent hauling drywall and patching cracks, that meant nothing?" "I paid you for that," my father said. "You paid me $100 a day," Mark said. That's not the point. The point is I showed up. I was there. She wasn't." He jerked his chin toward me. I felt my face get hot. "I didn't know you needed a gold star for fixing the basement," I said. "If I'd known, I would have brought a hammer." "Typical," Mark said. "Everything's a joke to you." "No," I said. "Not everything. But this ambush at Mom's table, pretending you care about transparency, this is a joke. You want to know what's in the will? Ask Dad in private. Don't make it a family meeting." Elena put her phone face down on the table. "This is not an ambush," she said. "This is a conversation. We're trying to have a conversation." "You're trying to have a negotiation," I said. "There's a difference." My mother stood up and took the mashed potatoes back to the kitchen. She didn't say anything. She just carried the bowl and set it on the counter with a soft clatter. I could see her shoulders moving, just slightly, like she was breathing through her teeth. Paul spoke for the first time. Maybe we can table this. We came to have dinner. Thank you, Paul, my mother said from the kitchen. She didn't turn around. Table it, Mark repeated. That's what you always say. Table it, bury it, wait until it's too late. That's how this family works. He looked at me dead on. You don't get to act like you're above this. You're the one who never picks up the phone. You're the one who doesn't come to holidays unless I call you 3 times. You think I don't notice? You think Dad doesn't notice? I opened my mouth to say something about the job, about the promotion, about how I'd been running on 4 hours of sleep and a cold cup of coffee for 3 weeks. But I closed my mouth. Because he was right about the phone calls. And he was right about the holidays. But he wasn't right about the house. I don't want the house, I said. I've never wanted the house. You can have the house. You can have the basement and the yard and the leaky roof. I don't care. Elena raised one eyebrow. Then why are you upset? Because you brought it up like I was a threat, I said. Like I was waiting in the wings to steal something. I'm not. I never have been. Then why are you always so distant? Mark asked. If you don't care about the house, if you don't care about the money, why do you act like we don't exist? I didn't have an answer for that. I looked at Paul, hoping he might jump in, but he was studying the label on his water bottle like it was a legal document. My mother came back to the table with a fresh bowl of green beans. Dinner is ready, she said. We're going to eat. And we're not going to talk about the will at this table. Fine, Mark said. But I'm not dropping it. Nobody asked you to drop it, my mother said. I asked you to eat. We ate. The potatoes were cold. The roast was dry. Elena cut her meat into tiny squares and moved them around her plate. Paul asked my father about the garden, and my father answered in monosyllables. I chewed and swallowed and tried not to think about Diane's office, about the framed motivational poster on the wall that said, "Teamwork makes the dream work," about how I'd had to sit there and listen to her tell me I was overqualified and too independent, and not the right fit for leadership. The word overqualified stuck in my throat like a fishbone. Halfway through the meal, Elena reached for the water pitcher and knocked over her wine glass. The red spread across the white tablecloth, a dark stain shaped like a hand. My mother gasped and ran for the towel. Paul jumped up to help. But Mark just sat there, staring at the stain, and said, "Look what you did." It was an accident, Elena said, her voice tight. You're always knocking things over, he said. Every single time we come here, you knock something over. It's like you want to ruin the table. Elena's face went pale. She didn't defend herself. She just dabbed at the wine with her napkin, making it worse. I watched her. I knew that look. It was the same look I had when Diane told me I'd been passed over. The look of someone who wanted to argue but had already learned that arguing was a waste of air. Mark, I said, leave her alone. It's just a tablecloth. Mom has 10 of them. That's not the point, Mark said. Then what is the point? I asked. Is the point that you're angry about the will? Because you've made that clear. Is the point that you don't like your wife? Because that's becoming clear too. That's unfair, Elena said. It is, I agreed. But so is blaming her for a glass of wine. Mark looked at me with something close to hatred. It was the same look he'd given me when I was 16 and he was 14 and I accidentally broke his guitar. It was the same look he gave me when I got into college and he didn't. It was a look that said, "You have what I want, and I don't know how to forgive you." You always do this, he said. You always make yourself the victim. I'm not a victim, I said. I'm just not going to let you talk to her like that. Paul cleared his throat. Honey, he said to me, maybe we should go. We haven't finished dinner, I said. I think we have. I looked at him. He had that look too, the one that said he was on my side but didn't want to be in the room anymore. The one that said he was tired of my family and my job and maybe even me. I put down my fork. Okay, I said. Let's go. My mother didn't try to stop us. My father didn't look up. He just sat there, staring at the wine stain, as if it were a map of something he'd lost years ago. Elena stood up and walked me to the door. She hugged me, which was strange because we never hugged. Thank you, she whispered. For defending me. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just nodded. In the car, Paul turned the heat on and sat in the driveway for a long time. The house was lit up behind us, all those yellow windows, All those people still inside. I watched my mother's silhouette move between the kitchen and the dining room, carrying plates, wiping the table, doing the work no one thanked her for. I got passed over, I said. Paul didn't ask for details. He just said, I know. You told me. I didn't tell you, I said. I said I didn't get the promotion. That's different. Is it? I turned to look at him. He was staring straight ahead, his hands on the steering wheel. Even though the engine was off. I got offered a position in the Eastern office, he said. It's a transfer. Same pay, more responsibility. I'd be gone for 6 months minimum. I felt the words land like stones in a pond. Ripples going out, going nowhere. When? I asked. They want an answer by next Friday. You've been sitting on this? I wanted to wait for the right time. There is no right time, I said. There's just time. And you didn't tell me. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't say anything. I sat in the passenger seat and watched my father get up from the table and walk toward the back of the house. He moved slowly. Older than I remembered. Mark and Elena were still at the table, not touching each other, not speaking. I thought about the promotion I didn't get. About the will I didn't want. About the transfer Paul had just told me about. And I thought about how none of it was about me, not really. It was all just people grabbing for things because they were afraid of having nothing. Drive, I said. Where to? Home. He started the engine. We pulled out of the driveway. I didn't wave. Nobody waved back. When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom and took off my good earrings. The ones my mother gave me on my wedding day. I set them on the dresser and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked old. I looked like someone who had spent her whole life being told she was too much, and then not enough, and then too much again. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for Paul to come in. He didn't. I heard him in the kitchen, opening the fridge, closing it. Then the television went on low, like background noise. I lay down and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. My mother, texting. Are you okay? I typed back, fine. I put the phone face down on the nightstand and closed my eyes. In the dark, I saw Diane's smile. I saw Mark's accusation. I saw Elena's trembling hand. And I saw my father, folding his newspaper, folding it over and over like he was trying to make it disappear. I didn't cry. That would come later. Right then, I just lay there, feeling the house settle around me, creaking and sighing, like an old animal waiting for something to change. But nothing changed. The night just went on, quiet and heavy, and I stayed awake long enough to hear Paul turn off the television and walk past the bedroom door. He didn't stop. He went into the guest room and shut the door. And that was how the first chapter ended. Not with a scream or a door slam. Just a door clicking shut, and me in the dark, counting the seconds until morning. I was at my desk by 7:15. The building was still half dark, the hallway lights on a timer that didn't kick in until 8. I liked it that way. The quiet. The empty break room. The smell of stale coffee from the pot someone had left on overnight. But when I turned the corner to my cubicle, the quiet was wrong. My desk was clean. Not tidy. Not organized. Clean. The framed photo of my parents was gone. The little ceramic mug I kept my pens in was gone. The stack of reports I'd left Friday afternoon, color-coded, tabbed, ready for Monday's meeting, was gone. I stood there for a long moment, holding my bag, thinking maybe I'd walked to the wrong row. But no. My nameplate was still there, turned face down on the empty surface. I picked it up. Someone had scratched a line through my title. Not deeply. Just enough to leave a mark. I heard footsteps behind me. Derek, my assistant, carrying a cardboard box. He was young, 24, still had that look of someone who thought a career was a straight line. He stopped when he saw me. Oh, he said. You're early. Where's my stuff? He didn't meet my eyes. They said to pack it up. Just the personal things. The files went to Kara. Kara? The new hire, he said. She's taking over the project leads. I set my bag down on the bare desk. Derek, I'm the project lead. I've been the project lead for 2 years. He shifted the box in his arms. Inside, I could see my mug. My photo. My little cactus plant from the office plant exchange. Diane said you'd be in a different role now. She said you were transitioning. Transitioning to what? He didn't answer. He just set the box on the desk and walked away, fast, like he was afraid I might follow him. I didn't follow. I stood there in the half-dark and looked at the box. My whole work life, reduced to a few items that fit in a banker's carton. I pulled out the cactus. It was still alive. That was something. At 8:15, the lights came on. The office filled up with the usual sounds, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the low hum of the ventilation system. I heard Kara's voice from the cubicle next to mine. She was on the phone, laughing at something, her tone easy and confident. I walked to Diane's office. The glass walls were frosted on the bottom half, clear on top. I could see her inside, leaning back in her chair, reading something on her tablet. She looked comfortable. She looked like someone who had slept well. I knocked on the frame. She looked up, smiled, and waved me in. That smile. I'd seen it 100 times. It was the smile she used when she was about to tell you something you didn't want to hear. Sit down, she said. Close the door. I closed it. I sat in the chair across from her desk. The same chair I'd sat in Friday afternoon, when she'd told me I wasn't getting the promotion. I see you found the new arrangement, she said. I found my desk empty. We're restructuring the department, she said. I told you that on Friday. The restructuring includes a realignment of responsibilities. We're moving toward a more collaborative model. Collaborative, I repeated. Yes. Kara will be managing the day-to-day project flow. You'll be moving to a support role. Clerical track. Reports, data entry, that sort of thing. That's a demotion. It's a transition, she said. We want to keep you on the team. We value your experience. But we need people who can work within the new framework. I looked at the motivational poster on her wall. Teamwork makes the dream work. The letters were crooked. I'd never noticed that before. Diane, I said, the quarterly report that got us the Walker contract, that was mine. I did the analysis. I wrote the summary. I presented it to the client. You presented it with the team. There was no team. I did it alone. Mark from accounting helped with the numbers, but the structure, the narrative, the recommendations, that was me. She leaned forward. Her smile didn't change, but her eyes did. They went hard, like the surface of a frozen lake. I'm aware of the work you did. And I'm grateful. But the decision has been made. You're being offered a position with a salary adjustment that reflects the new role. It's a very fair package. She slid a manila folder across the desk. I opened it. The numbers were there, printed cleanly. A pay cut. A significant one. I'm not signing this. You don't have to sign it today, she said. Take the week. Think about it. Talk to your family. Talk to my family, I said. That's what you tell me? Talk to my family. It's a big decision. I want you to feel supported. I stood up. The chair scraped against the carpet. You want me to feel supported? You just cleaned out my desk without telling me. You gave my files to my former intern. You're cutting my pay by 30%. This isn't support. This is a shove. She didn't flinch. I'm sorry you feel that way. You're not sorry, I said. You've never been sorry. I walked out of her office. The glass door swung shut behind me. I didn't look back. At my cubicle, Kara was standing, holding a binder. My binder. The one with my margin notes, my highlights, my color-coded tabs. Hi, she said. She looked nervous. I didn't know they were going to clean out your desk. I just got assigned this yesterday. It's fine, I said. It's not fine. She handed me the binder. This has your handwriting all over it. Diane said you were stepping down voluntarily. She said you wanted a change of pace. I looked at her. 3 years ago, she'd been an intern, eager and green. I'd taught her how to format spreadsheets. I'd shown her which clients needed handholding and which ones needed straight facts. I'd told her she had potential. She lied. I said. Kara's face went pale. She told me you were moving to part-time. I'm not moving anywhere. They're pushing me out. That's what this is. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, holding the binder, looking at me like I was a ghost. Keep the binder, I said. You'll need it. Those are my notes from the Walker account. There's a section in the back about the client's procurement process that isn't in any of the official documents. It might help you. I can't take your binder. You can. I don't need it anymore. I turned away from her and started packing my box. The cactus. The photo. The mug. A few stray paper clips. A thank you card from a client I'd helped 2 years ago. I didn't have much Kara left. I could hear her in her cubicle, opening the binder, flipping pages. I imagined her seeing my handwriting, my arrows and underlines, my little stars in the margins. She'd probably learn more from that binder than she'd ever learn from Diane. At noon, I took my lunch break. I went out to the parking lot and sat in my car. I'd packed a sandwich, but I didn't feel like eating. I just sat there, watching the employees stream out of the building, heading to the deli across the street, laughing and chatting like it was a normal day. I called Paul. He didn't answer. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Hi, it's me, I said. I'm at work. Something happened. I need to talk to you. Call me back when you can. I hung up and stared at the phone. The screen was dark. I waited 2 minutes, 3. No call. I called my old mentor instead. Gordon. He'd retired last year after 30 years at the company. He'd been the one who taught me how to navigate the politics, how to read between the lines of performance reviews, how to keep my head down and my work visible. He answered on the third ring. Well, he said. How's my favorite protege? I got passed over, I said. For the manager role? Yes. And now they're restructuring my department. They're offering me a clerical position with a 30% pay cut. He was quiet for a moment. I heard him exhale, long and slow. They're pushing you out. That's what I think. Did you file a complaint? About the nephew? Yes. 3 months ago. I filed it with HR. And Diane knows. Diane is the one who told me to file it. She said I had a valid concern. Gordon laughed, but there was no humor in it. She set you up, honey. She wanted documentation. She wanted proof that you were a problem. And you gave it to her. I was just telling the truth. The truth doesn't matter in those meetings. What matters is who's useful and who's a threat. You were a threat because you were too good at your job and too vocal about it. Diane's been building a case against you since the day you refused to go along with her cost-cutting proposal. I remembered that meeting. Diane had wanted to cut a whole department's training budget. I'd argued against it. She'd smiled and said, I appreciate your passion. So what do? I asked. You take the deal, he said. You take the pay cut. You start looking for another job. Quietly. And you don't burn any bridges on your way out. I can't afford the pay cut. Then you fight. But fighting costs money. Lawyers. Time. Stress. And you might still lose. Companies have deep pockets. And they have HR departments that know exactly how to make you look like the difficult one. I sat in the silence. A truck rumbled past in the parking lot. I watched a pigeon peck at a crumpled wrapper near the dumpster. Is that what you would do? I asked me. He paused. I would have left 3 years ago. But I didn't. I stayed. And I ended up retiring a year early because I was too tired to keep fighting. I don't want that for you. Thanks, Gordon. Take care of yourself. And call me if you need a reference. I'll say you were the best I ever worked with. Because you were. He hung up. I ate half my sandwich. It was dry. The bread stuck to the roof of my mouth. I drank some water from the bottle I kept in my door pocket. The water was warm. Back inside, I walked past Kara's cubicle. She was on the phone again, but this time she wasn't laughing. She was taking notes, quick scribbles, her face tense. She looked up and saw me. I nodded. She nodded back. I went to the break room. Diane was there, pouring coffee. She had her back to me. I could have said something. I could have told her I knew what she was doing. I could have threatened her with the complaint I'd filed, the one she'd encouraged. But I didn't. I just walked past her and got myself a cup of coffee. You still here? She asked. Her voice was pleasant, like we were old friends. I'm still here, I said. Good. I'm glad you're taking time to think about it. I didn't answer. I poured my coffee and left the room. In the hallway, I passed the conference room where I'd presented the Walker account. The glass walls were streaked with fingerprints. The table was covered in papers from a meeting I hadn't been invited to. I went back to my cubicle. My box was still there. I picked it up and carried it to the empty conference room. I shut the door and sat down at the long table. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. I tested the audio. It worked. I didn't plan to use it. Not yet. But something in me wanted to have it. Just in case. At 4:30, Diane walked past the conference room. She was on the phone. The glass walls were thin enough that I could hear her voice, muffled but clear. He's gone, she said. I handled it. She'll be on her way out by the end of the month. Just a matter of paperwork. She laughed. It was the same laugh I'd heard when I told her about the Walker contract, the same laugh she'd given me when I said I was going for the promotion. Don't worry, she said. She didn't even see it coming. That's what happens when people think they're indispensable. She walked on. The sound of her voice faded. I sat very still. My finger was hovering over the record button. I hadn't pressed it. But her words were already recorded in my head, lined up like witnesses, ready to testify. I didn't cry. I didn't pack my box any faster. I just sat there and breathed, slow and steady, until my hands stopped trembling. Then I called Paul again. He answered this time. Hey, he said. I'm in a meeting. You said that last time. I'm sorry. I'll call you later. I promise. I need you now. He was quiet. I could hear people talking in the background. A woman's voice. A small laugh. Can it wait? He asked. No, I said. It can't. Okay, he said. His voice shifted. The background noise went away, like he'd stepped outside. What is it? I told him about the demotion. The pay cut. The clean desk. The audio I hadn't recorded. He listened. He asked a few questions. Then he said, That's awful. I'm sorry. That's it? What else do you want me to say? I'm here. I'm listening. You're not here. You're somewhere else. And you've been somewhere else for weeks. That's not fair. I don't care about fair, I said. I care about you. And I don't feel like you're here with me. He sighed. I could hear the exhaustion in it, the weight. I have my own things going on. I know you're struggling. But I can't be your only support system. You have your family. You have friends. My family is tearing itself apart. My friends are people I see once a year. You're all I've got. He didn't respond to that. The silence stretched between us, a long, frayed rope. I'll be home by 7, he said finally. We can talk then. Okay. I do love you. I know. I hung up. I looked at my phone. It was 4:45. I had 15 minutes left of my shift. I carried my box to my car and drove home. I didn't look at the office building in my rearview mirror. I didn't want to remember it that way. At home, I sat on the couch with the box on my lap. I took out the photo of my parents. My mother was smiling, her hair still dark. My father had his hand on her shoulder, proud and steady. They looked like people who had never been betrayed. I set the photo on the coffee table. I put the cactus next to it. Then I lay back on the couch and stared at the ceiling, waiting for Paul to come home. He didn't call. He didn't text. At 7:30, I started to worry. At 8, I stopped worrying and started to count. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. I got to 500 before I heard the front door open. He came in, set his keys in the bowl, and looked at me on the couch. Hey, he said. Hey. He sat down in the armchair, not next to me. He had that look again, the one that said he had something to tell me and wasn't sure how. I took the transfer, he said. I closed my eyes. I leave in 2 weeks, he said. And I'm not coming back. Not for 6 months. Maybe longer. I opened my eyes. You decided this without me. I decided it for me. I stared at him. He stared back. Neither of us moved. And then he stood up, walked to the hallway, and disappeared into the guest room. I stayed on the couch, counting seconds again. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. I didn't know what I was counting toward. I just knew I couldn't stop. The knock came at 7:15 on Tuesday evening. I was still in my work clothes, a button-down with a coffee stain on the cuff I hadn't noticed until I got home. I'd spent the last hour sorting through bills on the kitchen table, spreading them out like a bad hand of cards. The electric bill was up. The water bill was late. Paul's transfer meant his salary would be split between 2 households for 6 months, and I'd done the math 3 times, each time coming up with the same hollow number. I opened the door and found Mark standing there with a folder under his arm. He wasn't dressed for a casual visit. He was wearing his serious face, the one he used when he was about to deliver news he thought was important. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside. He walked past me into the living room, looking around like he was checking for something. Paul wasn't home. He was at the office, packing up his desk for the transfer. I'd offered to help, and he'd said no. Paul's not here, I said. Good. I wanted to talk to you alone. He sat on the couch, the same spot I'd been sitting in last night, and set the folder on the coffee table. I sat in the armchair across from him. The cactus from my office was on the windowsill behind him, catching the last of the evening light. You look tired, he said. Everyone says that. Maybe because you're tired. I didn't answer. I just looked at the folder. It was the standard manila kind, but thick, stuffed with papers. Or what's that? I asked. He opened it. He pulled out a stack of bank statements, photocopies, and what looked like handwritten notes. He spread them on the table, a careful arrangement, like a prosecutor laying out evidence. I've been tracking Dad's accounts, he said. For 2 years. I felt my stomach drop. You've been going through Dad's accounts, I've been going through what I can access. He keeps the joint account with Mom open. I know the number because Mom used to give it to me for emergencies when I was in college. She never changed it. And Dad never checks the online statements. He still gets them in the mail. That's illegal. It's not illegal if it's a family account. I'm listed as a beneficiary on some of the savings. I'm not hacking anything. I just looked. I leaned forward. Why? Because I noticed something. 2 years ago, Dad started writing checks. Regular ones. Same amount, same date every month. Always made out to the same person. He slid a photocopy across the table. I picked it up. It was a check, signed in my father's neat handwriting, made payable to a woman named Grace M. The amount was $520. The date was the 15th of every month. What is this? I asked. I don't know. But it's been going on for 2 years. Maybe longer. I only have the last 24 months of statements. I set the check down. Who is Grace M? I don't know that either. But I think we should find out. I sat back in the chair. The room felt smaller than it had before. The walls seemed to press in, and the light from the window was harsher, sharper. You've been sitting on this for 2 years, I said. I needed proof. I couldn't just go to Mom and say, hey, Dad's sending money to some woman. I needed to see the pattern. I needed to be sure. And now you're sure. Now I'm sure. He leaned forward. I want you to come with me. To confront him. Not Mom. Not Elena. Just you and me. We go to Dad, we show him the statements, and we ask him who Grace is. Confront him. I'm not saying we attack him. I'm saying we ask. There's a difference. I looked at the checks again. $520. Every month. 24 months. That was over $12,000. And that was just what I could see. You should have told me sooner, I said. I didn't want to be wrong. And I didn't want to cause trouble if there was nothing to cause. But there is something. There's something, he agreed. Whether it's trouble or not, I don't know. That's why I want you to come with me. I turned the photocopy over. There was nothing on the back. Just the numbers, the signature, the name. Grace M. It could have been anyone. A friend. A relative. A creditor. A stranger. Why me? I asked. You don't even like me. Mark looked at me. For a second, the hard edge in his eyes softened. You were always the one who talked to Dad, he said. The one who got him to open up. I'm not good at that. I get angry too fast. I say things I don't mean. But you can sit with him, and you can ask, and he'll answer. You said I was Dad's favorite. I did say that. And I meant it. But that's not your fault. That's just how it is. I didn't know what to say to that. Mark had spent most of his life competing with me for air in the room. Now he was handing me the microphone. Does Mom know about any of this? I asked. I don't think so. She'd have said something. She can't keep a secret to save her life. I thought about that. My mother, with her good china and her constant motion, her hands always busy, her mouth always moving. If she knew, she'd have let something slip by now. Okay, I said. I'll come with you. But I want to talk to Dad alone first. Just me. I want to get a sense of what we're dealing with before we bring him the evidence. That's fair. Mark started gathering the papers. I watched him fold them carefully, the same way our father folded his newspaper. The same slow, deliberate crease. One more thing, he said. Elena doesn't know about this. Doesn't know about what are the checks. The research. Any of it. She thinks I've been working late. Why are you hiding it from her? He paused. His hands were still on the folder, but they'd stopped moving. Because she'd want to use it, he said. She'd want to leverage it somehow. She's always thinking about the next step, the next advantage. And I'm not saying that's wrong. But this is our family. I don't want it to become a transaction. I was surprised by that. Mark had never been the one to protect the family. He was the one who exposed the cracks. Thank you, I said. For telling me. He stood up, holding the folder against his chest. We'll go see Dad on Thursday. I'll pick you up at 7. We'll have dinner with him, and then, when Mom's in the kitchen, we'll show him the papers. And if he doesn't answer, he'll answer. He has to. Mark left. I stood in the doorway and watched him drive away, his car fading into the dark street. The folder was on the passenger seat beside him, a dark shape against the window. I closed the door and went back to the kitchen. The bills were still on the table. The water bill. The electric bill. A credit card statement I'd been avoiding. I pushed them aside and sat down, my elbows on the table, my head in my hands. I thought about Grace M. I imagined her face, her age, her voice. Was she young? Old? Was she someone my father had known for years or someone he'd met recently? $520 was not a fortune, but it was a specific amount. The kind of amount you give someone who needs help with the rent. Or the medication. Or the light bill. I thought about my father. The way he'd folded his newspaper at dinner. The way he'd refused to look at anyone when Mark brought up the will. The way he'd sat there, silent and still, while the wine soaked into the tablecloth. He was hiding something. That much was clear. But I didn't know if it was something bad or something sad. At 9 o'clock, Paul came home. He looked tired, his tie loose, his jacket draped over his arm. He set his briefcase by the door and walked past me without a word. Mark came over, I said. He stopped. What did he want? He wanted to show me something. About Dad. Paul turned around. For a second, he looked almost interested. Then the mask went back on. What about Dad? Money. Regular checks written to a woman named Grace. He's been sending her $520 a month for 2 years. Paul stared at me. You're joking. I wish I was. Did you confront him? Not yet. Mark wants to do it Thursday. Together. Paul walked into the living room and sat down on the couch. He put his hands on his knees, like he was bracing himself. That's a lot of money. I know. Do you think your mom knows? I don't think so. Mark doesn't think so either. Paul was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, be careful. You don't know what you're walking into. People hide things for a reason. I know that. I mean it. You're already dealing with your job. You're dealing with me leaving. You don't need to add this to the pile. I sat down next to him. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to see the lines on his face, the ones that had appeared over the last few months. He looked older. He looked tired. I need to do this, I said. If I don't, I'll always wonder. And I've spent too much of my life wondering. I understand. He reached over and put his hand on my knee. It was a small gesture, but it was something. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself. I promise. He squeezed my knee and let go. We sat there in the quiet, neither of us speaking. I thought about the transfer. The guest room. The bills on the table. The checks in Mark's folder. Everything felt like it was piling up, like I was trying to carry too many boxes at once. But I wasn't going to drop any of them. Not yet. Thursday came faster than I wanted. Mark picked me up at 7, exactly as he'd said. He was wearing a button-down shirt, no tie, and he'd combed his hair back. He looked nervous. Ready? He asked. No, I said. But I'm going anyway. We drove to my parents' house in silence. The streets were familiar, the same turns I'd taken 1,000 times. The same houses, the same lawns, the same porch lights. Everything looked normal. Everything looked like it always had. But it wasn't normal. And it hadn't been for a long time. My mother opened the door. She was surprised to see us together. Both of you on a Thursday? What's the occasion? Just wanted to see you, Mark said. And Dad? Is he home? He's in the garage, working on the shelves. You know how he gets. We walked through the house to the garage. My father was there, standing on a step ladder, drilling a bracket into the wall. He turned when he heard us come in. Mark. Claire. He nodded. Didn't expect you both tonight. Can we talk to you? Mark asked. Alone, my father looked at Mark, then at me. He set the drill down and stepped off the ladder. What's this about? Mark pulled the folder out from under his arm. He held it up, just high enough for my father to see. These, Mark said. We need to talk about these. My father stared at the folder. He didn't ask what was inside. He seemed to know. Let's go inside, he said quietly. Your mother's making tea. I don't want her to hear this. We went back into the house. My mother was in the kitchen, boiling water. She called out, I'll bring you some tea in a minute. Thanks, Mom, I said. My father led us to the dining room. The table was still set from the last dinner, the blue-flowered china still in the cabinet. He sat down at the head of the table, and Mark and I sat on either side. Show me, my father said. Mark opened the folder and laid the statements on the table. The checks. The photocopies. The dates and amounts, all lined up. 2 years, Mark said. $520 a month. Same date. Same signature. Made out to Grace M. My father looked at the papers. He didn't touch them. He just looked. Dad, I said, who is Grace? He was quiet for a long time. The house was still. The only sound was my mother humming in the kitchen, the soft clink of teacups. Then my father reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He opened it and slid out a photograph, worn and creased. He put it on the table. Her name, he said, is Grace. She's my sister. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with the photograph my father had given me resting on my nightstand, and I stared at it until the edges blurred in the dark. It was an old picture, yellowed and soft, showing 3 young people standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. My father was on the left, thin and smiling, his hair thick and dark. A woman who looked like him stood on the right, her arm around a girl who couldn't have been more than 16. The woman was Grace. The girl was my mother. I hadn't known they'd grown up together. I hadn't known Grace was his sister. I hadn't known my father had a sister at all. When I finally dozed off, I dreamt of the check, $520 floating in a sea of blue flowers. I woke up with a start at 6 and sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that went cold in my hands. Paul came out of the guest room at 7. He was dressed for work, his suitcase already packed, leaning against the wall by the front door. I'll be gone by Friday, he said. The movers are coming tomorrow to pack my office things. I nodded. I know. We should talk about the apartment. The lease. The bills. Not now, I said. I can't. He looked at me for a long moment, then picked up his suitcase and walked out the door. He didn't kiss me goodbye. I didn't expect him to. I called in sick to work. It was the first time I'd ever done it without actually being sick. I told Derek I had a fever. He said he hoped I felt better. I knew he was lying. He sounded relieved, like the phone call had been a small reprieve from an awkward morning. I drove to the address Mark had given me. It was in a part of town I didn't know well, past the highway and through a neighborhood of small houses with well-kept yards. The houses were older, the kind built in the 50s, with narrow driveways and porches that sagged just slightly in the middle. I found the house at the end of a quiet street. The paint was cream, the shutters green. There was a garden in the front, full of roses that hadn't been pruned in a while. I sat in my car for a long time. The engine ticked as it cooled. I watched the front door and tried to imagine my father walking up the path, knocking, handing over a check. $520. Once a month. For 2 years. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know if she'd even open the door. But I got out of the car and walked up the path anyway. The door opened before I could knock. A woman stood there, older than I'd expected, with silver hair pulled back in a loose knot. Her eyes were the same color as my father's. The same shape, too. I recognized him in her face, the same way I recognized myself in my mother's. You must be Claire, she said. I blinked. How did you know? Your father told me you might come. He called last night. Said you'd found out about the checks. She stepped back and held the door open. Come in. I just put the kettle on. I walked into her house. It was small but clean, full of light. The furniture was worn, the kind that had been in the same place for decades. There were photographs on the walls, black and white ones, sepia ones, the whole family history laid out in frames. Sit down, she said. I'll get you some tea. I sat on a floral couch that smelled faintly of lavender. I looked at the photographs. There was my father as a young man, standing next to Grace at a picnic. There was my grandmother, stern and unsmiling, holding a baby I didn't recognize. There was a man in a military uniform, his face half-shadowed. Grace came back with 2 cups of tea. She handed me one and sat across from me in a rocking chair. She didn't say anything at first. She just sipped her tea and looked at me like she was memorizing my face. You look like him, she said. Around the eyes. I look like my mother, I said. Maybe. But your eyes are his. I'd know them anywhere. I set the teacup on the saucer. My hands were shaking. I put them in my lap. I didn't know you existed, I said. Nobody ever told me. Not my father. Not my mother. Not my grandmother. Grace nodded slowly. I wouldn't expect them to. Your grandmother and I had a falling out. A bad one. She didn't want my name mentioned in the house. And your father, bless him, he's never been good at going against her wishes. Even after she passed, he kept the silence. I think he was afraid of breaking something he couldn't fix. What did you fight about? She was quiet for a moment. She set her teacup down and folded her hands in her lap. I left, she said. When I was 19. I left the family and I didn't come back. Your grandmother never forgave me for that. She said I abandoned my duty. I abandoned my brother. I abandoned her. Why did you leave? Grace looked at the photographs on the wall. She pointed to the man in the military uniform. That was my husband. I met him when I was 18. He was older, and he wasn't the kind of man your grandmother approved of. She said he was too old. Too rough. Too poor. She said I was making a mistake. And she might have been right. He wasn't perfect. But he was the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered. I looked at the photograph. The man's face was strong, kind. The kind of face you'd trust without asking questions. He died, Grace said. 20 years ago. Heart attack. He was 63. We had 44 years together. I don't regret a single one. I thought about my grandmother. I remembered her as a stiff, formal woman who never laughed and never hugged. She wore the same blue dress to every holiday, and she always sat in the corner, watching everyone like she was taking notes. I'd always thought she was just old. I'd never thought about what made her that way. Your father started sending me money 2 years ago, Grace said. I didn't ask for it. He just started showing up. He'd park outside and knock on the door and hand me an envelope. He never stayed long. We'd talk for a few minutes, and then he'd leave. I think he was afraid someone would see him. Why did he start? I got sick, she said. Cancer. Ovarian. It wasn't a good diagnosis. I didn't have health insurance. I was living on Social Security and the small pension from my husband's job. I couldn't afford the treatment. I couldn't even afford the visits. I stared at her. She didn't look sick. She looked thin, but not frail. She looked like someone who had been through a lot and had come out the other side. Are you okay now? I asked. I'm in remission, she said. It's been 10 months. The doctor says I'm stable. But the bills are still coming. And your father, he won't stop. He says he owes it to me. He doesn't owe you anything. Yes, he does. She leaned forward. Your grandmother blamed me for everything. She blamed me for leaving. She blamed me for not being a good daughter. And your father, he was the one who had to listen to it. Every day, every meal, every quiet evening. She filled his head with all that poison, and he never fought back. He just listened. He just took it. That's not his fault. I know it's not. But he feels like it is. He feels like he should have stood up for me. He feels like he should have come with me. And he never did. So now he's making up for it. One check at a time. I finished my tea. It had gone lukewarm. I set the cup down and looked at Grace. Her hands were thin, the bones visible beneath the skin. She had my father's hands. The same long fingers, the same gentle way of holding things. Does my mother know about you? I asked. Grace shook her head. She was just a girl when I left. She and your father weren't even married yet. She knew me, but she didn't know what happened. Your father never told her the full story. And your grandmother certainly didn't. She might know now, I said. My brother and we confronted my father last night. He told us about you. Grace's face went pale. He told us you were his sister. He showed us a photograph. He didn't tell us the rest. I had to come find that out myself. Grace sank back in her chair. She looked tired all of a sudden, like the effort of talking had drained the strength from her. I'm sorry, she said. I never wanted to cause trouble. That's why I never reached out. I knew it would be easier if I stayed away. It's not easier, I said. Nothing about this is easier. I stood up. I didn't know why I was leaving. I just knew I couldn't sit there anymore. The weight of the story, the years of silence, the checks and the lies, it was too much to carry in a single teacup. Can I come back? I asked. Grace looked surprised. Of course. Whenever you want. I walked to the door. I turned back and looked at her, sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by photographs of a life I'd never known existed. Thank you, I said. For telling me. Thank you for coming, she said. Your father always said you were the curious one. The one who asked questions. He was right. I walked out of the house and down the path. The roses were bright in the afternoon sun, red and pink and white. I stopped to touch one. It was soft, alive. I drove home in a daze. The streets passed by in a blur. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a long time, staring at the front door. Paul's car wasn't in the driveway. He was at work. Or at the other office. Or somewhere else entirely. I went inside. The house was quiet. I walked into the kitchen and saw Paul's suitcase by the door. He'd packed it while I was gone. I unzipped it and looked inside. Clothes. A book. A small toiletry bag. Nothing that suggested he was coming back. I zipped it back up and went to the bedroom. I lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. I thought about Grace. I thought about my grandmother, sitting in her corner, watching everyone with her cold, calculating eyes. I thought about my father, driving to that little house, handing over a check, carrying the weight of a secret he'd never been allowed to share. I thought about Paul. The way he'd looked at me when he said he was leaving. The way he'd stopped touching me. The way he'd started hiding behind the guest room door like it was a shield. I didn't cry. I lay there, dry-eyed, and counted the minutes until I had to get up again. At 5 o'clock, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. Claire, she said. Are you coming to dinner on Sunday? I don't know, I said. Mom, did you know Dad had a sister? The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. Who told you about that? She asked. Dad told me. Last night. He showed Mark and me a photograph. He shouldn't have done that. He should have done it a long time ago. Mom, she's sick. She has cancer. He's been sending her money. $520 a month. For 2 years. My mother was quiet. I could hear her moving, opening a drawer, closing it. Then she said, I always knew. You knew? I knew he was sending money somewhere. I didn't know where. He said it was for an old friend. I didn't push. I didn't want to push. But you didn't tell us. I didn't think it was my place. It was between him and her. And your grandmother. Your grandmother made it very clear that Grace was not to be discussed. Ever. Grandma's been dead for 15 years. That doesn't matter. Once a rule is made in this family, it stays made. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The phone felt heavy in my hand. Mom, she's not a secret. She's a person. She's Dad's sister. She's my aunt. I know, my mother said. And for the first time, her voice broke. I know. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to undo all those years. So I did nothing. I didn't have an answer for her. I didn't have an answer for anyone. We hung up. I lay back on the bed and closed my eyes. The ceiling was white, blank, empty. I stared at it until it started to blur. At 7, Paul came home. He didn't say hello. He went straight to the guest room and shut the door. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and started dinner. I made pasta, something simple, something that didn't require much thought. I ate alone at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd sorted the bills 2 days ago. I left a plate for Paul on the counter, covered with foil. He didn't come out to eat. I washed the dishes by hand. The water was hot. I let it run over my fingers until they turned red. Then I went to the living room and sat on the couch. The cactus was on the windowsill. The photo of my parents was on the coffee table. I picked it up and looked at it. They were young. They were happy. They didn't know about Grace. I set the photo down and picked up my phone. I typed a message to Mark. I went to see her today. She's our aunt. I'll tell you tomorrow. He replied, I knew it. I didn't ask what he meant. I just turned off the phone and sat in the dark, waiting for morning. Monday morning came cold and gray. I put on the same dress I'd worn on Friday and drove to the office. I was going to sign the demotion papers. I decided that over the weekend, not because I accepted it, but because I needed the paycheck while I looked for something else. The alternative was walking out with nothing, and I couldn't afford that. The building looked the same. The lobby smelled the same. The security guard nodded at me the same way he always did. Everything was normal. Everything was exactly as it had been before I'd found out about Grace, before Paul had packed his suitcase, before the world had tilted sideways. I walked to my cubicle and sat down. The box was still there, the one Derek had packed. I hadn't taken it home. I'd left it under the desk, reminder of what I'd lost. I pulled it out and started unpacking. The cactus went back on the windowsill. The photo of my parents went back on the corner of my desk. The ceramic mug went next to my keyboard. It felt like pretending. Derek came by at 9. He had a stack of files in his arms, the kind I used to handle. Diane wants to see you, he said. She said to bring the signed paperwork. I don't have it yet, I said. She said you have until noon. I nodded. He lingered for a moment, shifting the files from one arm to the other. I'm sorry, he said. About all of this. It's not right. Thanks, Derek. He walked away. I watched him go, his shoulders hunched, his steps quick. He was young. He'd learned. I spent the morning cleaning out my digital files. I deleted old emails, archived projects, backed up contact lists. I wasn't going to give them anything they could use against me. I wasn't going to make it easy for them to erase me. At 10:30, I went to the break room for coffee. Diane was there, standing by the machine, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I walked in. Good morning, she said. Did you bring the papers? I'll bring them by noon. Good. I need them before the payroll deadline. I poured my coffee. I didn't look at her. I didn't want to see her face, the careful smile she wore like armor. Claire, she said, I want you to know this isn't personal. It's a business decision. Everything's personal, I said. You just don't want to admit it. She didn't respond. I left the break room and went back to my cubicle. At 11, Kara came by. She was carrying the binder I'd given her, the one with my margin notes. She looked nervous, her fingers tapping against the cover. Can I talk to you? She asked. Sure. She sat down in the chair next to my desk. She was close enough that I could smell her perfume, something floral and light. I've been going through the binder, she said. Your notes are incredible. The procurement process section, I would have never found that on my own. That's why I gave it to you. But I can't keep it. She set the binder on my desk. It's not fair. You did all the work. I'm just supposed to take over like it's mine. Kara, that's how the world works. Someone does the work, someone else gets the credit. You'll do the same thing to someone else someday. I don't want to. I looked at her. She was sincere. I could see it in her eyes, the way she was trying so hard to be different. I remembered that feeling. I'd had it once, a long time ago. Keep the binder, I said. Use it. Make the Walker client happy. That's what matters. Can I at least tell Diane that you helped me? Tell her whatever you want. She won't listen either way. Kara stood up. She picked up the binder and held it against her chest. I'm sorry, she said. For everything. For taking your job. For being the one they chose. It's not your fault, I said. They would have chosen someone else if they didn't choose you. You were just in the right place at the right time. She walked away. I watched her go, her steps uncertain, her shoulders tight. She'd learned too. We all did. At 11:30, I walked to Diane's office. The glass walls were clear. I could see her sitting at her desk, talking on the phone. She was laughing again. That same laugh I'd heard in the break room, the one that said she'd won. I didn't go in. I stood outside the door and waited. I could hear her voice, muffled but clear. She's signing today, Diane said. The demotion. She didn't have a choice. The severance was too small, and she's not stupid enough to walk away without a safety net. She laughed again. It was the laugh of someone who'd never been cornered, never been hungry. Yeah, she said. By the end of the month, she'll be gone. I'll make sure of it. She paused, listening. Then she said, don't worry. I've got it handled. She's not the first one I've had to move out. And she won't be the last. I opened my phone and pressed the record button. I held it up to the glass. The audio was clear, the words sharp and distinct. I'm not going to let her fight it, Diane said. She's too tired. I can see it in her face. She's already given up. I recorded for another 30 seconds. Then I stopped and pocketed the phone. I didn't knock on the door. I turned around and walked back to my cubicle. At noon, I went to Diane's office with the signed papers. She was off the phone now, looking at something on her computer. She took the papers without looking at them. Good, she said. I'll process these today. Before you do, I said, I want a formal exit interview. She looked up. You're not leaving yet. The demotion takes effect next month. I know. But I want the interview on the books. Next Friday. I want to talk to HR about the restructuring. Diane's smile flickered. I'm not sure that's necessary. It's necessary for me. I've been here for 9 years. I want a record of how I was treated. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said, fine. I'll schedule it for Friday at 3. Thank you. I walked out of her office. I didn't look back. That afternoon, I went back to my cubicle and started working on the clerical tasks they'd assigned me. Data entry. Filing. It was mindless work, the kind that didn't require any thought. I did it without complaints. I did it without emotion. Derek came by at 4. He looked at my screen and said, you don't have to do that. I can handle it. It's fine. I'm being paid. Barely. I shrugged. Barely is better than nothing. He sat down in the chair Kara had used. He had the same nervous energy, the same quick movements. I heard you requested an exit interview. Word travels fast. This place is small. Everyone knows everything within an hour. Then you probably know why I requested it. He nodded. Diane's been talking. She's telling people you're leaving voluntarily. She's saying you're stepping down for personal reasons. She's lying. I know. That's why I wanted to tell you. He leaned forward. If you need a witness, I'll speak up. I heard her on the phone last week. She was talking about you. About how she was going to push you out. I looked at him. He was young, but he was serious. Why would you do that? I asked. You'd be risking your job. I don't want to work for someone who does that to people. If you're going to stand up to her, I want to be on your side. I didn't know what to say. I felt something shift in my chest, a small loosening of the knot that had been there for weeks. Thank you, Derek. But I don't want you to get involved. I'll handle it. You sure? I'm sure. He left. I went back to my data entry. The numbers blurred on the screen, but I kept typing, kept moving, kept pretending. At 5, I packed my bag and left the office. The parking lot was emptying, the cars pulling out one by one. I stood by my car and watched them go, taillights fading into the gray evening. I called Paul. He answered on the second ring. What? He said. I need to tell you something. I'm not signing the divorce papers yet. Claire, just listen. I'm not signing them because I need time. I need to figure out who I am without you. And I can't do that if I'm rushing to end something that took 12 years to build. He was quiet. Then he said, that's not fair. You're the one who said you wanted a trial separation. I did. But that doesn't mean I want a divorce. It means I want to breathe. And I can't breathe if I'm making permanent decisions. He sighed. I could hear the exhaustion in it, the weight of a conversation he didn't want to have. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know either. But I know I'm not ready to let go. He said nothing. The silence stretched between us, long and fragile. I have to go, he said finally. Paul, I have to go. He hung up. I stood in the parking lot, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. At home, I ate a frozen dinner and sat on the couch. The cactus was on the windowsill. The photo of my parents was on the coffee table. I looked at them and thought about all the things I didn't know. All the secrets I'd uncovered. All the ones still waiting. I picked up my phone and opened the audio file. I'd recorded Diane's voice. I'd captured her words, her laugh, her casual cruelty. It was evidence. It was a weapon, but I didn't want to use it. Not yet, I just wanted to know it was there. A lifeline. A reminder that I wasn't as powerless as they thought I was. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because Paul was there, he was still at the apartment, packing, but because I couldn't bear to sleep in the room we'd shared. The bed was too big. The sheets smelled like him. The silence was too loud. I lay in the narrow bed, the one we'd never used for guests, and stared at the ceiling. The same ceiling I'd stared at for weeks. The same cracks, the same shadows. I thought about Grace. I thought about my father. I thought about my mother, carrying the weight of a secret she'd never been allowed to share. I thought about Mark, using the will as a weapon when what he really wanted was to be seen. I thought about Diane, laughing on the phone, thinking she'd won. I thought about Paul. The way he'd looked at me in the parking lot. The way he'd stopped touching me. The way he'd chosen to leave. I didn't cry. I didn't have any tears left. I just lay there, counting the seconds until morning, waiting for the next thing to fall. Friday came faster than I expected. I spent the morning at my cubicle, doing the clerical work they'd assigned me, keeping my head down and my mouth shut. The office hummed around me, the same sounds I'd heard for 9 years, but now they felt distant, like I was watching everything through a pane of glass. Derek brought me coffee at 10. He didn't say anything, just set it on my desk and walked away. I wanted to thank him, but the words stuck in my throat. I just nodded and drank the coffee. It was black, no sugar. He knew how I took it. At 2:30, I went to the restroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, the same tired I'd been seeing for months. But there was something else there too. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. A small flicker of readiness. I walked to Diane's office at 3. She was there, sitting behind her desk, her laptop open in front of her. The HR representative was already seated, a woman named Patricia who I'd only spoken to once before, when I'd filed the complaint about the regional VP's nephew. "Claire," Diane said. "Sit down." I sat in the same chair I'd sat in weeks ago, when she'd told me I wasn't getting the promotion. The same chair I'd sat in when she'd slid the demotion papers across the desk. The same chair I'd sat in when I'd realized she had no intention of keeping me. Patricia smiled. It was a practiced smile, the kind that said, "I'm here to be neutral," while the whole building knew she was on Diane's side. "Claire, thank you for requesting this meeting. We're here to discuss your transition to the new role. Diane tells me you've agreed to the demotion." "I signed the papers," I said. "But I want to talk about why it happened." Diane leaned back in her chair. "Claire, we've already discussed this. The restructuring is a business decision. It's not personal." "Everything's personal," I said. "You told me that yourself." Patricia looked between us. "Let's focus on the facts. What specific concerns do you have about the transition?" I opened my bag and pulled out my phone. I set it on the table, screen up, the audio app open. "I have concerns about the fairness of the process," I said. "I believe I was passed over for the promotion because I filed a complaint about the regional VP's nephew. I believe the demotion is retaliation. And I have evidence." Diane's face went still. "What evidence?" I pressed play. The audio came out clear, Diane's voice unmistakable. "She's signing today. The demotion. She didn't have a choice. The severance was too small, and she's not stupid enough to walk away without a safety net." Patricia's smile faded. I let the recording play. Diane's laugh. Her casual dismissal. Her words about pushing me out. All of it, captured and clear. When it ended, the room was quiet. Diane's face was pale. Patricia was staring at the phone like it had grown teeth. "I recorded that conversation," I said. "From the hallway. You were on the phone. You were talking about how you were going to get rid of me. You said I'd already given up." Diane opened her mouth, but no words came out. Patricia cleared her throat. "Claire, this is serious. These are serious allegations." "I know they are. That's why I have the recording. And that's why I'm not asking for money." I leaned forward. "I don't want severance. I don't want a payout. I want a written statement acknowledging that my work on the quarterly report was mine. I want it placed in my permanent file. And I want to be able to use that statement in future job applications. Patricia blinked. That's it, that's it. I'm not asking for Diane's job. I'm not asking for my old position back. I'm not asking for a lawsuit. I'm asking for my name to be restored. Diane found her voice. That's ridiculous. You can't just, actually, Patricia said. She can. If she has this recording, she can file a complaint with the labor board. She can sue us for retaliation. This is a liability. It's not a liability, Diane said. It's a disgruntled employee. It's a recording of you admitting to pushing an employee out, Patricia said. And if that goes to the board, we're looking at fines, audits, and a public relations nightmare. I sat back in my chair. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Diane stared at me. For the first time, I saw something shift in her eyes. Not fear, exactly. Something closer to recognition. Like she was seeing me for the first time. What do you want? She asked again. I told you. A written statement. My name on the work I did. Nothing more. Patricia wrote something down on her tablet. We can draft that statement. It will be signed by both Diane and myself, and it will be added to your permanent file. You'll receive a copy within 72 hours. Thank you, I said. I stood up. I looked at Diane one more time. Her face was still pale, her hands still gripping the armrests of her chair. I'm not your enemy, I said. I was never your enemy. I was just someone who wanted to do good work. And you couldn't let me do that. I walked out of the office. The glass door swung shut behind me. In the hallway, I paused. My hands were shaking. I put them in my pockets and took a deep breath. The air in the hallway was cold, sterile, familiar. I'd walked these halls for 9 years. I'd known every corner, every door, every nameplate. I walked back to my cubicle. Derek was there, standing by my desk, a cardboard box in his hands. They said you were leaving, he said. They said you weren't coming back. I'm not, I said. But I'm leaving on my own terms. He set the box down. What happened, I told him. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. You really did it, he said. You actually recorded her. I didn't plan it. It just happened. That's the best kind of planning. I started packing my desk. The cactus. The photo. The mug. The thank you card from the Walker client. I set them in the box one by one. Where will you go? Derek asked. I don't know yet. But I'll find something. He helped me carry the box to my car. The parking lot was half full. The afternoon sun was low, casting long shadows across the asphalt. Take care of yourself, he said. You too. And Derek, if they try to push you out, fight. Don't let them do to you what they did to me. I won't. I got in my car and drove away. I didn't look back. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my driveway. It was my brother. I answered on the third ring. Claire, he said, his voice tight. You need to get to the hospital. It's Dad. He had a heart attack this morning. I didn't ask questions. I just turned the car around and drove. The hospital was a 40-minute drive. I made it in 30. I parked in the garage and ran through the main entrance. The lobby was sterile, white, too bright. I asked for my father's room at the front desk. The woman gave me a room number and pointed to the elevators. I took the stairs. I didn't want to wait. I found the room on the 3rd floor. My mother was in the hallway, sitting in a plastic chair, her hands folded in her lap. Mark was standing next to her, his face pale. What happened? I asked. He collapsed this morning, Mark said. In the garden. He was pruning the roses and he just fell. Neighbor saw him and called 911. Is he okay? He's stable, my mother said. Her voice was quiet, hollow. They say it was mild. He's going to be fine. But they're keeping him overnight for observation. I sat down next to her. The chair was cold. I reached over and took her hand. She didn't pull away. The doctor said it was stress, Mark said. He's been under a lot of pressure. Work. The house. Everything. I knew what he meant. The secrets. The checks. The weight of all those years. Did he say anything? I asked. He asked for you, my mother said. He kept saying your name. He wanted to make sure you were okay. I felt something crack inside my chest. I squeezed my mother's hand and didn't let go. We sat in the hallway for 2 hours. The nurses came and went. The sun set outside the window, turning the sky pink and gray. My mother didn't move. Mark paced back and forth, his phone in his hand, checking it every few minutes. At 8, the doctor came out. He was young, tired, his white coat wrinkled. Your father is resting now. He's stable. You can see him for a few minutes, but keep it brief. My mother went in first. She was in there for 10 minutes. When she came out, her eyes were red. Go, she said to me. He wants to see you. I walked into the room. My father was in the bed, propped up on pillows, his face pale, but his eyes open. He looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Fragile. Claire, he said. His voice was weak, but he was smiling. You came. Of course I came. I pulled a chair up next to the bed. I sat down and took his hand. His skin was cool, dry. I'm sorry, he said. For all of it. For the secrets. For the lies. For not telling you sooner. It's okay, I said. It's not okay. But I'm glad you know now. About Grace. About everything. I nodded. I didn't have the words. He squeezed my hand. You were always the one who held us together, he said. You and your mother. You kept this family from falling apart. I never said it. I never said thank you. Dad, I mean it. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than any of us. I couldn't speak. I just held his hand and let the tears come. When I left the room, Mark was waiting in the hallway. He didn't say anything. He just put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed. We walked out of the hospital together. The parking lot was quiet, the lights flickering overhead. What now? Mark asked. I don't know, I said. But I'm going to figure it out. I got in my car and drove home. The streets were dark, empty. I thought about everything that had happened. The demotion. The recording. The hospital. My father's words. When I got home, I sat on the couch in the dark. The cactus was on the windowsill. The photo of my parents was on the coffee table. I picked it up and looked at it, really looked at it. They were young. They were happy. They didn't know what was coming. But they'd made it through anyway. I set the photo down and picked up my phone. I typed a message to Grace. My father had a heart attack. He's okay. I'll tell you more tomorrow. She replied, thank you. I'll be here. I turned off the phone and sat in the dark, waiting for the morning to come. 2 weeks passed. My father came home from the hospital on a Tuesday, slower than before but steady. The doctor said the heart attack was mild, a warning more than a disaster, but he'd have to change his habits. Less salt. More rest. No more heavy lifting in the garden. My mother took charge of his meals with a quiet determination that surprised me. She'd always been the one to smooth things over, never to take a stand. But now she stood at the stove every evening, measuring portions, counting calories, and my father ate what she put in front of him without complaint. I went to see Grace on the Wednesday after he came home. I drove to her little house and sat on her porch, and she served me lemonade from a pitcher she'd had since the 70s, the glass cloudy with age. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her husband, about the small bakery they'd run together for 20 years, about the children they'd never been able to have. She told me about my grandmother, the cold silences, the letters that went unanswered, the way she'd tried to reach out after our grandmother died and gotten nothing but silence from my father. He was afraid, she said. Your father. He was always afraid of making things worse. He thought if he reached out to me, your grandmother would turn her anger on him. And she would have. She was a woman who held grudges like they were precious stones. I told her about Paul. About the separation. About the transfer and the guest room and the divorce papers I still hadn't signed. He'll come back, she said. I don't think he will. Then let him go. You can't hold a person who wants to leave. All you can do is open the door and let them walk through it. And then you close it behind them and you get on with your life. She said it with such simple finality that I almost believed her. I started looking for a new job that week. I updated my resume and sent it to a few logistics firms in the area. I didn't aim high. I just wanted something stable, something that would pay the bills and leave me with enough energy to figure out the rest. A small company called Ridgewood Distributors called me back the same day I applied. They were looking for a coordinator, someone with experience, but not too much ambition. The pay was modest, but the hours were fixed and the office was close to home. I took the job. I started 2 weeks later. The day before I started, my mother called and asked me to come to dinner. Just me and my father and my brother. No spouses. She said it was important. I drove over on Sunday afternoon. The house looked the same blue shutters, the same creaking porch swing. My mother opened the door before I could knock, and she hugged me for a long time, longer than she'd hugged me in years. Come in, she said. Your father's in the living room. My father was sitting in his armchair, the one he'd had since I was a child. He looked thinner, his face more lined, but his eyes were clear. He smiled when I came in. Claire, he said. Sit down. I sat on the couch. Mark was already there, sitting in the chair across from my father. He looked nervous, his hands clasped between his knees. My mother came in with a tray of tea and set it on the coffee table. She sat down next to my father, close enough to touch his arm. I asked you all here, she said, because I have something to say. She paused. I'd never heard her sound so steady. I've known about Grace for 40 years, she said. I knew her before I married your father. She was kind to me. She was the one who helped me plan the wedding. She made the cake. She sewed the ribbon on my bouquet. Mark and I exchanged a look. After she left, my mother continued. Your grandmother told me never to mention her name again. She said Grace had abandoned the family. She said she was dead to us. And I believed her. I was young. I didn't know better. She took a breath. But I knew your father was sending her money. I found the check stubs 2 years ago, by accident. I was looking for a receipt in his desk drawer. And I saw the name. Grace M. And I knew. You knew, I asked. I knew, she said. And I didn't say anything. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what it meant. Afraid of what your grandmother would have said. Afraid of what it would do to this family. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me. It's a letter, she said. I wrote it last week. I want to give it to Grace. I want to tell her I'm sorry. I want to tell her I was wrong. I opened the letter. It was written in my mother's careful handwriting, the loops and curves I'd known my whole life. It was short, just a few sentences. Dear Grace, I am sorry I didn't reach out sooner. I was wrong to stay silent. I was wrong to let your mother's anger control me. I hope you can forgive me. I would like to see you again if you're willing. With love, Eleanor. I folded the letter and handed it back to her. She would want to see you, I said. Will you come with me? My mother asked. When I go see her, yes, I said. I'll come with you. My mother nodded. She put the letter back in her pocket and sat back in her chair. My father reached over and took her hand. Now, my mother said, let's eat. We had dinner in the dining room. The blue-flowered china was on the table, but it didn't feel like a funeral anymore. It felt like something else. Something like a beginning. I drove home that night with the windows down. The air was cool, clean. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove and thought about everything that had happened. At home, the apartment was empty. Paul had moved out permanently the week before. He'd taken his clothes and his books and the small lamp from the nightstand. He'd left his keys on the kitchen counter. I hadn't called him since. I sat on the couch and looked around. The apartment was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. I got up and walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and looked inside. There wasn't much: milk, eggs, a half-eaten loaf of bread. I made a list in my head of what I needed to buy. I thought about what I would cook for myself that week. I went to bed early. I slept through the night without waking once. Monday morning, I started my new job. The office was small, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's name. My desk was by the window, and I could see the street below, cars passing, people walking. The work was straightforward, no surprises. I answered emails. I organized shipments. I updated spreadsheets. It was ordinary. It was enough. On Wednesday, my mother and I drove to Grace's house. She'd dressed carefully, a blue blouse and matching earrings. She held the letter in her hands like it was something sacred. Grace opened the door before we knocked. She looked at my mother, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then my mother said, "I'm sorry." Grace stepped forward and hugged her. My mother started to cry, soft, quiet sobs that shook her shoulders. I stood back and watched them hold each other. When they pulled apart, Grace said, "You look just like you did when you were 16. Same smile. I'm not 16 anymore, my mother said. Neither am I. But that doesn't mean we can't start again. We sat in Grace's living room, the three of us, and drank tea from the cloudy glasses. My mother told Grace about the last 40 years. About my father's health. About my grandmother's death. About the family she'd tried to keep together. Grace listened. She told my mother about her husband, her bakery, her years of silence. She didn't sound bitter. She sounded like someone who had found peace. I was angry for a long time, Grace said. Angry at your mother-in-law. Angry at your husband. Angry at everyone who didn't fight for me. But anger is a heavy coat. I got tired of wearing it. My mother nodded. I'm still wearing it, she said. I've been wearing it for years. I didn't even know it. You can take it off, Grace said. It's never too late. We stayed for 3 hours. When we left, my mother was smiling. She hugged Grace at the door, and Grace hugged her back, and for the first time in a very long time, my mother looked like she had come home. That weekend, I went to my father's house alone. He was sitting on the back porch, watching the garden. The roses were in full bloom, red and pink and white. Your mother told me she went to see Grace, he said. She did. It went well. Good. He paused. I should have told you about her a long time ago. I should have told everyone. You did the best you could, I said. That's not good enough. It's going to have to be. He looked at me. His eyes were tired, but there was something else there too. Something like relief. You're not going to hold it against me, he asked. No, I said. I'm not. He reached over and took my hand. We sat on the porch together, watching the garden, not saying anything. I left that evening. I drove home with the windows down and the music on. I thought about Paul. I thought about the divorce papers. I thought about Grace and my mother and my father. I thought about the job. The small office. The quiet days. When I got home, I took out the divorce papers and looked at them. I read every page. Then I signed them and put them in an envelope. I addressed the envelope to Paul's lawyer and set it on the counter. The next morning, I mailed it. A week later, Mark called and asked me to have coffee. We met at a small cafe near the office. He looked tired, but not the tired of before. This was a different kind of tired. The kind that came with acceptance. Elena and I are going to counseling, he said. We're trying to work things out. That's good. I also talked to Dad. About the will. I told him I didn't care about the house. I told him I just wanted to know I wasn't being forgotten. And what did he say? He said I wasn't. He said he'd made sure we were both taken care of. Equally. I nodded. That's good. I'm sorry, he said. For all the things I said at that dinner. I was angry. I was scared. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. You were angry, I said. But you were also right. About some things. I did pull away. I did stop calling. I did stop showing up. I understand why you did. That doesn't make it right. He reached across the table and took my hand. We're going to be okay, he said. All of us. I think we're going to be okay. I looked at his hand on mine. It was warm, steady. Yeah, I said. I think we are. The last scene happened on a Sunday. I was in my new apartment, unpacking a box I'd been avoiding. It was full of my grandmother's china, the set my mother had given me years ago and I'd never used. I set it on the counter, one plate at a time. The blue flowers were faded, the edges chipped. But the plates were solid. They'd been through a lot. I set one plate on the counter and stood back to look at it. I didn't plan a dinner. I didn't plan anything. I just looked at the plate and thought, this is mine now. Not the house. Not the job. Not the marriage. Just this plate. And I was fine with that. I put the rest of the plates away and closed the cabinet. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The sky was gray, soft, the kind of sky that promised rain. I didn't mind the rain. I had a roof. I had a job. I had a family that was slowly learning how to heal. I had myself. And for the first time in a very long time, that felt like enough. The rain came that night, soft and steady against the windows. I sat on the floor of my new living room, surrounded by boxes I hadn't finished unpacking. The cactus was on the windowsill. The photo of my parents was propped against the wall, waiting for a frame. I didn't have much furniture yet. A couch I'd bought secondhand. A table I'd found at a garage sale. A bed that was still in pieces in the bedroom. But the apartment felt like mine in a way the old one never had. Every corner held something I'd chosen. I thought about Paul. I wondered if he'd gotten the papers. I wondered if he'd signed them yet. I didn't feel the ache I'd expected. There was something else instead, something quieter. A letting go. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Grace came over today. We made jam. Your father ate half of it before dinner. I smiled and typed back, send me some. She replied with a photo. A row of jars on the counter, glowing in the afternoon light. I saved the picture and set the phone down. I walked to the kitchen and opened the cabinet. The blue-flowered china was stacked neatly, waiting. I took out one plate and set it on the counter. Then I opened the fridge and looked inside. Eggs, milk, a block of cheese, a bag of carrots. I took out the eggs and cracked 2 into a bowl. I had toast and scrambled eggs for dinner, eaten off my grandmother's plate. It was simple. It was ordinary. It was exactly what I needed. After dinner, I sat on the couch and looked around. The apartment was quiet, but it wasn't the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of space. Room to breathe. Room to think. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the photos. Mark and Elena at their counseling appointment. My father in his garden, standing next to the roses. Grace and my mother laughing at the kitchen table. I stopped at a photo I'd taken the day I started my new job. Me, standing outside the office building, my hair pulled back, my coffee in my hand. I looked tired. But I was smiling. I closed the phone and set it down. I leaned back on the couch and closed my eyes. The rain continued. The night went on. And I sat there, in the quiet, not thinking about the future. Not thinking about the past. Just thinking about right now. This plate. This apartment. This moment. That was enough. That was everything.